Commission, and I will begin with a few introductory comments. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, please make sure that all cell phones have been silenced. Please note that tonight's Planning Commission meeting will be rebroadcast via CityLink and posted on the www.minnehahacounty.org site for viewing by the general public. Any final action taken on the conditional use permit applications tonight will take effect 5 working days following this meeting unless a written appeal of the Planning Commission's decision is filed in the Planning Office by Monday, December 5th at 5 p.m. In the event of an appeal, the decision will be referred to the County Commission for a hearing on Tuesday, December 20th at or after 9 a.m. The affected parties will be notified of the meeting date, and meetings of the County Commission are held in this same room. First on the agenda is public input. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? At this time, the Planning Commission will consider the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are perceived to be non-controversial and meet all the requirements of the codes and regulations. The consent agenda will be acted on in one motion with no public hearing on the items unless a member of the public, the commission, or staff requests the item be removed from the consent agenda. The minutes from the October 24th, 2022 meeting are included in the consent agenda. Next, I will read each item on the consent agenda and ask if there are any issues or comments from the Planning Commission or the audience. If any member of the Planning Commission or audience would like to be heard on the item, please raise your hand and the item will be moved to the regular agenda to allow you to address the commission later in the meeting. Any items remaining on the consent agenda will be approved by the Planning Commission with the conditions recommended by staff. Item number 1 is the approval of the minutes of the October 24th, 2022 meeting. Item number 2 is conditional use permit 22-80 to amend CUP 07-06 to increase the allowed accessory building square footage from 3,200 to 10,200 for a Class 1 home occupation of farm equipment repair on the property legally described as Tract 1, Burkhart's Edition, Northwest Quarter, Section 2, Township 104 North, Range 48 West. That is in Logan Township. Petitioner and landowner is John Naragon, located at 24406 482nd Avenue. Does anyone from the audience or the Planning Commission wish to be heard on this item? Item number 3 is conditional use permit 22-83 to transfer two building eligibilities from the Northeast Quarter. There is an exception of Martin's Tracts 1 and 2 and 3. And the east half, the Northwest Quarter, there's an exception of the west 304.62 feet, the north 286 feet, and except the south 50 feet, the north 336 feet, the west 100 feet. End of exception. To the Northeast Quarter, all in Section 23, Township 103 North, Range 48 West, Edison Township. Petitioner is Jeffrey Martins. Landowners are Jimmy and Margie Martins, located 2 miles west of Garrettson. Does anyone from the audience or Planning Commission wish to be heard on this item? Okay, so we'll remove item number 3 to the regular agenda. So I will need a motion for item number 1 and item number 2.
I'll make a motion to approve item number 1 and item number 2.
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve item number 1 and item number 2. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We'll move item number 3 to the regular agenda. Scott?
Thank
And
you.
if your item has been approved, you're free to go.
Thank you, Scott Anderson, Planning Director. And this is conditional use permit 2283. It's to move two building eligibilities as shown on the map. This is located approximately 2 miles west of Garrettson at the intersection of 483rd Avenue and 253rd Street. The applicant is requesting to move two building eligibilities closer to 253rd. And I visited the site, and we can show some pictures. There are two residences located within a half mile of the proposed area. And a right to farm notice would need to be filed on any property that would be platted or used for a new dwelling or new single-family residence. The transfer does not increase the overall density. There still would only be one house per 40 acres. They just would be moving them to the north and closer to the road to be able to be used. There are no other utilities that would need to be put in other than water and sewer and electric for the residents. The off-street parking requirements as required in the fourth item that we consider would be covered when the single-family residence is built, and there would be off-street parking in the form of a garage. Typically, a transfer of a building eligibility does not produce any offensive odors, dust, noise, fumes, or vibrations which would constitute a nuisance. And when we look at the health and safety and the welfare of the public, the proposed conditional use permit to transfer building eligibilities would not have really any impact on the general welfare, and the moving this would even enhance the productivity of the rest of the property and cluster those homes together. Staff is recommending, we find that the conditional use permit request to be consistent with the zoning and comprehensive plan, and we are recommending approval of conditional use permit 2283 with two conditions. One, that they file a right to farm covenant before a building permit's issued for a single-family residence. And then secondly, they would need to get approval from Edison Township for any new driveway location. So you want to show the slides of the, so basically there's just a farm field out there. You can see this is sort of looking to the southwest. There is one residence. This is the one that's to the north across the street. And this is also, you can see where this is located, the little notch out there. And it's an empty field, so I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for him? If not, is the petitioner here? Will you please step forward and state your name and address?
I'm Jeffrey Martins. I live on Wall Lake. This is my mom's property. I'm her power of attorney. She's 84, and this is kind of her retirement plan. We got the two building eligibilities that were way back in the middle of the section. We just want to move them up along the gravel road where natural gas runs along, rural water runs along. So that's her retirement plan. If she needs some money, she's got a building eligibility that she can sell. It's pretty simple.
Any questions for him? Guess not. Anyone else care to speak to this item? Step forward and state your name and address, please.
I'm just Connie Gasper Bowl. I live south of the proposed property. The map wasn't very, I was just making sure. I thought my sister and I both have eligibility, building eligibility, just making sure it didn't involve that. I was unclear. This is my first time with this. So just, it's clear to me now. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak to this item? Okay. Commissioners?
Madam Chair, I move approval of conditional use permit number 22-83 to transfer two building eligibilities.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve conditional use permit 22-83. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. We'll move on to the regular agenda. Item number 4, which is conditional use permit 22-82 to allow a bed and breakfast establishment of the property legally described as part of Tract 11, lying adjacent in Tract 2, lots 15 and 16, Voight subdivision, Section 21, Township 101 North, Range 51 West, Wall Lake Township. Petitioner and landowners are Orlando and Jessica Anderson. It's located at 46224 West Shore Place. Mason?
Good evening, Commissioners. Mason Stefan from the County Planning Office again. So this request is to operate a short-term rental operation such as those seen on Airbnb and VRBO out of the existing house on the subject property, and I'll bring up that map here so you can see where that is. As of now, Minnehaha County classifies such a use as a bed and breakfast establishment, which requires a conditional use permit. The petitioner has stated that they have operated this business for several years out of this property without issue, and that they have only recently become aware that they needed a conditional use permit for the use. Along with the application, the petitioner has submitted a detailed narrative for the operation that explains the number of guests allowed in the house, their process for maintaining the property, how the property will remain secure, and several of the rules that guests must follow. Some of the rules would be quiet hours, rules for guest parking, and rules regarding the sanitary sewer system. In addition, the narrative explains that the house does have outdoor cameras and also has a Ring doorbell, which allows them to monitor the front door of the property. They have also said that they have installed an automated lock on the front door so that the entrance code for the Airbnb or VRBO can be delivered to guests electronically, and so that the code can be changed for each new group of guests. They've also stated that they specifically cater to families, and that they, along with Airbnb or VRBO, can screen potential guests before approving their stay. A little bit more about this subject property. It's located on West Shore Place on the west side of Wall Lake, which is a road used by approximately 30 houses on this portion of the lake. The parking for this operation would be the two concrete pads to the south of the house, which you can kind of see there. There's the one in front of the house, and then there is one in front of the accessory building, which isn't showing up on that picture, but it is there in the site pictures that I'll show in a moment. Additionally, a majority of the lots along the road are existing single-family dwellings, and the use of a bed and breakfast establishment within the existing dwelling should not have a major impact on the surrounding area given the proper conditions. Also, given the fact that the petitioner has a very clear set of rules and has operated for several years so far without issue, the proposed operation should not have an overly negative impact on the surrounding area. As before, there are 6 conditions that we look at for every conditional use permit. Number 1 is the effect upon the use and enjoyment of other property in the surrounding area for the uses already permitted and upon property values within the surrounding area. The short-term rentals such as the proposal generally are compatible with residential sites such as this due to the traffic being limited and generally the same as any other single-family dwelling. And this use is easily converted back into a typical single-family dwelling as well if the property owner decides to stop operating the bed and breakfast establishment. Number 2, that the effect upon the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. As stated, any new development in the area would more than likely be additions or replacements of single-family houses in this area. Most lots are already developed with existing houses, so there are very limited vacant lots in this area. Number 3, that utilities, access roads, drainage, and/or other necessary facilities are provided. This property does have those 2 accesses off of West Shore Place, as I stated, which will be used for the parking. And given that it's developed as a single-family dwelling already, it already has access to electricity, it's connected to the sanitary sewer and to water. Number 4 is that the off-street parking and loading requirements are met. The The petitioner did submit a site plan which shows that they'll have at least 5 off-street parking spaces in front of those two in front of the accessory building, 3 in front of the existing house. Number 5 is that measures are taken to control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, and lighting, so that none of these will constitute a nuisance. The petitioner has given a list of rules to staff that the guests must follow when using the bed and breakfast, and that the property owner will have signs throughout the house reminding people of the limitations of the sanitary sewer system at Wall Lake. And any public nuisance violations will be addressed upon the planning department receiving those complaints. Number 6 is that the health, safety, general welfare of the public in the comprehensive plan. The petitioner will be required to maintain a list of guests who will stay at the property, and this must be maintained and available for law enforcement if needed. And the petitioner will need to have functioning smoke and carbon monoxide detectors as required by the building code for Minnehaha County. And before I go over the conditions, I'll just show a few site pictures here. So this is just a picture from the front of the house, so you can see that there's the 2-stall garage, and then there's the 3 parking spaces on the pad in front of it. And then this is more of an angled picture showing the accessory building. And the petitioner has stated that they're not going to allow people to park in this building, but you will be able to park in front of it on those 2 spaces there with that parking pad. And then this is just looking at the access to the west, which shows West Shore Place down to 463rd, I believe is the connecting street down there. And then here is just the neighboring properties to the west, just showing how the relation to the other properties in the area. So I'll go back to the site plan. And then with that, staff is recommending approval of conditional use permit 2282 with 7 conditions, and I can read those or available for questions if you have any.
And he's aware of these conditions, Mason?
The petitioner?
Yes.
Yes, we have discussed these conditions, and he might bring up some questions he has on them, but I'll let him bring those conditions up.
Anyone else have any questions for him? Okay. Is the petitioner here? Will you please step forward, state your name and address?
Would you like both of us at the same time, I assume? Or, yeah, that works. Lando Anderson, 46224 West Shore Place, Hartford. You have to state your name and address.
Jessica Anderson, 46224 West Shore Place.
Okay. Do you have any questions for him? And you're aware of the conditions?
Yeah, so the one that I brought up to Mason, number 5, the establishment shall be limited to a total of 12 guests of the same family at one time. And that was one that I brought up to him, where we do primarily have families, but at the same time, once we started this process, we froze all bookings, so we don't have any bookings right now. But the last group we had were 4 men who came for some pheasant hunting. We have some, random groups throughout the year where we might have, a group of women who gather together each summer and they happen to choose our location. So there might not specifically be families, but it's typically a family sort of atmosphere. So that restriction does make it difficult in being open to the type of people that we might bring in.
And the other types of groups we have would be multiple families. They use our house as a gathering place for parents, grandparents to be able to come together. So it's
Or
multiple.
friends with families who gather together. They might have, three families with 1 or 2 small children gathering together.
Can you address this, Mason?
Yeah, so I did discuss this condition with Lando last week, and we, along with me and Kevin here, discussed it as staff, and we don't see any reason why of the same family would be necessary. If you have 6 people from one family and 6 people from another family, or a 12-person family, there's not much difference in terms of the atmosphere. So the purpose of the condition, or the intent behind the condition, is just to limit the potential of it becoming a party house. So that's the intent of the condition.
Okay, that's understood?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for him? I guess not at this time. Anyone else in the audience care to address this item? Okay. So I'll close the floor. Commissioners?
Can I ask Mason one question?
Oh, sure.
Have
Adam?
have we had a different number before on different Airbnbs, like 9 or 6 or 9? I
Yeah.
can't remember. It seems different. Different ones have been different numbers, it seems like.
Yeah, so the one that just came before us last month, on the other side of Wall Lake, that one was approved for 6 guests, I believe. Usually it's just dependent on the amount of people that the house can handle, so the number of bedrooms or sleeping bedroom. So 2 people per bedroom usually. So
Okay,
that's-
all right, that's understandable.
Pardon me? Are you going to address this item?
Oh, I have a clarification question between
Okay.
this and another item on the agenda. What's the difference between the two? There's one at the bottom that talks about vocate,
That's a different item, and I'll be discussing that one at the very end of the meeting.
but what's the difference between the two is what I'm asking.
So this item is a specific Airbnb request or bed and breakfast request on this specific property. At the end, it will be a just discussion of changing the zoning ordinance for the entire county. So that won't be a specific property, that's just a discussion on changing the regulations for the entire county.
So will this one be affected, will the way this one is be affected by that one?
No.
Okay, that's why I wanted clarification. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any other questions, commissioners? Do I have a motion?
For purposes of discussion, I will move acceptance of conditional use permit number 22-82 to allow bed and breakfast establishment.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second for discussion for conditional use permit 22-82. Becky?
I would move that we strike the language in number 5 that says of the same family and just limit it to 12 guests.
Okay. Will that be your,
I guess that's my
Motion?
actual motion. I didn't do a very good job with that.
okay, I do have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
Yes,
agree to that?
yes, I do.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve conditional use permit 22-82, except for number 5, which we will take out of the same family. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Item number 5, additional use permit 22-84 to expand the mobile home park on the property legally described as the east half, the northwest quarter. There is an exception, H-1 and H-2, and except Macau's tracks 1 and 2. End of exception. Section 1, Township 103 North, Range 50 West, Lyons Township. Petitioner and owners are Northeast Investments LLC, located at 47137 250th Street. Mason?
Good evening, Commissioners. Mason Steffen from the County Planning Office. So this request is to expand the existing mobile home park, the existing Coachman Manor mobile home park on the north portion of this property. The south 35 acres of this property was rezoned from the A1 Agricultural District to the RR Rural Residential District in June of 2022 in anticipation of this conditional use permit to expand the mobile home park. This conditional use permit request would allow the property owner to expand the mobile home park and add approximately 115 mobile home sites to the property. During the rezoning process, there were several issues with the park expansion that were brought up by staff and the commission. These included the fact that the current wastewater pond for the property is located in the water source protection area, which is this pond down here in the lower right. And the petitioner has submitted several documents that addresses this issue, including a site plan that indicates the new wastewater pond for the entire park will not be in the water source protection area. I'll go to that site plan here. And that this new lagoon will be a 2-cell lagoon system that will use gravity sewer connections to direct the wastewater to the pond, and that the wastewater pond will be closed off from the park by a fence, as you might be able to tell on that site plan. One of the other issues that came up in the rezoning process was the access to the property, and the petitioner has worked with the County Highway Department and the South Dakota Department of Transportation to determine the best course of action for the access to this property. After the first meeting for the rezoning in June and now, there was a study performed on this I-29 exit by HDR Engineering, and this study was forwarded to the county planning office from the County Highway Department. Within this study, there is a recommendation that the posted speed limit on the highway in the area between the I-29 interchange and the access for this property be reduced to 40 miles an hour so that a left turning lane can be installed into the mobile home park from the east. This recommendation is added as a condition of approval for this request, and the proposed highway alterations will need to be completed prior to the development of this park expansion. Additionally, planning staff did submit this specific site plan to the County Highway Department, and they didn't have any additional comments besides the study that was performed in the area. In addition, within the existing mobile home park to the north, there have been issues with campers being used as permanent dwellings and mobile homes being moved onto the property without the proper building permits. Therefore, staff would recommend conditions be placed on the expansion in order to ensure that all mobile homes placed on the property meet the HUD standards for mobile homes, and that all work done on the property does get a building permit and meets all of the building codes for Minnehaha County. Just as a reference, a typical single-wide mobile home will usually range between 750 and 1,000 square feet, which would give a permit fee range of $110 to $150 per mobile home. And there's 115 mobile homes, just as a reference, on this expansion. Additionally, the submitted site plan shows that the road access within the mobile home park expansion will only be 20 feet wide. However, the Minnehaha County zoning ordinance requires that all roadways within mobile home parks be at least 24 feet wide, and they have to be 24 feet wide if there is no on-street parking. As in reviewing the site plan, the petitioner is supplying one off-street parking pad for each mobile home site. So the road within the park will need to be 24 feet wide as opposed to that 20 that is on the site plan. In addition, the petitioner has stated that they will be constructing a playground and a community/storm shelter building on the northern edge of this park expansion. And this community/storm shelter will be a 20 by 40 building, which would only provide 800 square feet of storm shelter. However, after discussing the storm shelter requirements with the county building inspector, his recommendation based on the International Building Code would be 15 square feet for each mobile home site in the expansion, which would be a minimum of 1,725 square feet of storm shelter within the park expansion. Additionally, staff did visit the site in the beginning of November, and there has been a few updates to the roads, which I will show here in a moment with the pictures from the last site visit in June, where there were some potholes and the road was starting to deteriorate a little bit. Also during this site visit, there were several campers being used in the existing park, which just highlights the necessity of having a condition limiting campers being used in the park expansion. Again, with every conditional use permit, there are 6 criteria. The effect upon the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for uses already permitted. The area is a mix of land uses, including the existing mobile home park, a couple single-family dwellings, a commercial operation, and vacant farmland. The effect on the current permitted uses in the area should be minimal with the proper conditions, given that there is already a mobile home park in the area, and this would just be an expansion. And also the hard surfacing requirements within the park, as well as the updated wastewater pond, should limit the potential nuisances off the property as well. The effect upon the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. Given that this subject property was specifically rezoned in June to the rural residential zoning district for this park expansion, expanding the mobile home park onto this land that was specifically rezoned for this use should not have an overly negative effect on the other vacant property in the area. Number 3, that utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities are provided. The petitioner will need to work with Minnehaha Community Water and Sioux Valley Electric in order to provide the necessary water and electrical services to the park expansion. Also explained earlier, the wastewater management will be updated from the current mobile home, or the current wastewater pond, which is in the water source protection area, and everything will be updated to the new 2-cell lagoon system, which will help reduce runoff into the water source protection area. Additionally, all access roads within the park will need to be a minimum of 24 feet wide as well as hard surfaced, and the petitioner will need to provide at least 1,725 square feet of storm shelter. Number 4, that the off-street parking and loading requirements are met. Each mobile home site will have a paved off-street parking pad that is approximately 18 by 31 feet in size, which will satisfy the off-street parking for the park and for each mobile home site, and there are no loading requirements for this type of operation. Number 5, that measures are taken to control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, and lighting so that none of these constitute a nuisance. As explained, the wastewater park will be updated to a modern 2-cell system, which will help mitigate any potential offensive odors, also prohibiting recreation vehicles from being used within the park will also limit the concerns of improper sewage disposal, and all outdoor lighting installed on the property should be designed to limit light pollution off the property. And as always, any public nuisance violations will be addressed upon the planning department receiving any complaints about the subject property. Number 6, that the health, safety, general welfare of the public and the comprehensive plan. The future land use plan within the 2035 comprehensive plan designates the Baltic exit as a commercial industrial growth area. However, much of the exit does remain undeveloped farmland, and with few commercial uses. There's the Baltic Corner gas station on the other side of the interstate, and then there is the Sunderman manufacturing operation within or to the north of this mobile home park. Other than that, there is limited commercial development in this area. Therefore, allowing an expansion of the existing mobile home park onto land that has been rezoned to the rural residential zoning district should not interfere with any future development at the Baltic exit. And then I'll just go over the site plan a little bit. So the community building that is listed on the site plan is this green building right here, that is the 800 square foot storm shelter that the petitioner has submitted as part of the site plan. But as stated, based on the international building codes, they should provide at least 1,725 square feet. The petitioner initially submitted a site plan that had this as 2 phases, where everything north here was 1 phase and everything south here was a 2nd phase. However, the petitioner has just made it 1 phase that they will develop as they go down to the south. So it won't be, they'll develop all of phase 1 and then develop all of phase 2. It'll kind of just be, the whole entire project will be a phased approach. There won't necessarily be a separation. And then, as I stated, this is the 2-cell lagoon system that will have the chain link fence around the entire lagoon. And then I'll go to some site pictures here. So here's the existing access to the property, and as you can see, there's this Y. And if you go down this Y, it goes to the Sunderman manufacturing building, and then to the east side of the park. And then if you come down this way, it goes to the west side of the park. And just to the west of this will be the first access on this site plan. So right where my cursor is right here will be this access on the expansion, if that makes sense. So additionally, in this picture, you can see that this is the highway up here, And all the traffic coming from the east will be in that left turning lane, so that will be where the left turning lane will be coming from, will be from this direction over here. And then this is just another picture showing a little bit farther back of that access, and this single-family dwelling that does use this access is still there on the west side of this access. And this is just showing to the south the Sunderman Manufacturing, and then the name of the mobile home park. So this is the picture just of the current wastewater pond just to the south here, just so you could, I never took a picture of it during the rezoning, so just so you could visualize where it currently is and how low lying it is. And then here is a picture looking to the east. So where I'm standing in this picture would be the road access, and on each side of these would be the mobile homes down to about here, and then the access would come through these trees up to the existing park. And then this is looking to the north to the existing park, so I'm standing in that road again, and you can see that there's this grove of trees between where the park expansion will be and where the current park will be. And right in front here will be where that lagoon will end up once all the grading is completed. And then this is just looking to the west on that same road path, so you can kind of visualize that there'll be mobile homes on each side of this road here. And then this is looking to the southwest, which shows the closest residence to the park expansion, which is a farmstead over on right here. If you can see where my cursor is, over on this area, it's on the road, so it's about a quarter to half mile away from the park expansion. And then this will be the last picture I show. This just looks to the north, showing that there is a bit of a drop off here on the north part of the expansion. So most of the grading will have to happen on this side of the park in order to make all the grading work in this area. But with that, I'll go back to the site plan. And staff is recommending approval of conditional use permit 2284 with 11 conditions. And I am available for any questions, or I can read those conditions if you have questions on them.
Anyone have any questions for him?
Madam Chair,
Becky?
I have some questions. So right now, I believe there's a fair number of children that reside. And where will the bus stop to pick up children and turn around? I would assume with the addition of that many homes, there's going to be more children.
Yeah. So as of right now, the bus picks up children by the mailboxes here. I know that was another thing that came up in the rezoning, was there was concern from the Sundermans of school children being out by the mailboxes while Sunderman is getting in their trucks for their deliveries. I don't really have a better answer in saying that the pickup will probably be the same area for the entire park. I don't have a better answer in terms of if there will be another one farther south.
Okay, and then my next question is, while there's going to be 2 access roads near the top, for those bottom 20 to 25 mobile homes, there will still just be 1 access area for emergency vehicles, correct?
Correct, yep. So down to this across, so this area is across that, so this right here is the current lagoon that they're going to be replacing. So yes, there will just be the 1 access road across this embankment here to the other side, to those over there.
And then, I'm sorry, I've just got quite a few questions. And so this long row of mobile homes that will border the farm property, will they be required to sign a right to farm covenant since it's an active farm just on the other side of the road? I mean, they'll be right next to combining and planting or pasture.
I don't believe they would be required to. Scott might be able to better answer that question.
Good question.
So that's only a requirement in the ag zoning district, and this property is zoned rural residential. So it's implied that it will be developed as residential. So I guess the answer would be they would not be required to sign any kind of right to farm notice. But you're right, they will be next to a field and potentially will be impacted when there is farming activity there.
Okay. And then I have one last question. So about the spaces in the emergency shelter, that's enough for the new part?
Yes.
But there's no emergency shelter for the old part, correct?
Correct. The calculation is for the park expansion, so we're just going based off of the park that's expanding, not the existing park.
So who gets in?
That's a good question. Yeah. I guess since this is for the park expansion, we're just, we can only enforce the
Only deal
actual-
with that.
Yep, with only the expansion since the current one has been existing for so long, but.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mason.
Anyone else have any questions? I do. I'm a little concerned about the safety too, about the storm shelter. Being with that, I mean, I think we're all aware that when we get a storm here, people should not remain in modular home or mobile home or whatever it is. They've been made aware, I mean, the petitioner's been made aware of what our thoughts are about that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've given them the staff report and they've looked it over. They haven't contacted me with any concerns on it, so I don't know their thoughts on it, but they do know already.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for him? Okay. Is the petitioner here? Will you please step forward, state your name and address?
My name is Glenn Boomsma. I'm an attorney. I work at Brighton Boomsma Law Office. I do represent Northeast Investments LLC. I did want to present some more introductory type information and material to you, but to be candid, most of the questions will likely be fielded to Nick Johansson. He's an engineer. He's with me tonight. He's the author of the plans, the sketches, the drawings that have been submitted to the commission. So like I said, he's going to be more knowledgeable about the fine details. What I can mention is that, like Mr. Steffen indicated earlier, this property was rezoned. It was rezoned to rural residential. That happened June 28th. A little bit about Coachman Manor. Coachman Manor sits on the north side of this proposed expansion area. It consists of about 55 to 60 mobile homes. And yes, there have been improvements to that mobile home park. That's a nice park, but more specifically, what's been done in the way of improvements would be the road resurfacing that was brought up, the tree upgrades, trimming, some removal of trees, electrical upgrades, and there's also been some sewer line upgrades. I bring all this up because I think it just adds to the appealability of the expansion area that we're promoting. What's been submitted by petitioner in support of this petition tonight would be a traffic study. And that's dated September 14th of this year, prepared by HDR Engineering. And it was prepared through the cooperation of the state DOT. Notably, what that traffic study depicts would be that, well, there needs to be a left turn lane on Highway 114 on the north side of the property. Also, Highway 114 needs to be widened. There needs to be a slower speed limit in that area where there's going to be that turn lane. Specifically, what's been recommended is that speed limit be reduced down to 40 degrees. I think currently it's at 65 degrees. Development plans. Mr. Johansson's been instrumental in submitting plans related to grading, the Highway 114 left turn lane, the layout of the development, the road system and design within the expansion area, and the pond design and layout. This expansion area would add approximately 110, maybe as much as 120 new spaces for mobile home parks. What seemed to be the primary concerns when we were in front of the commission for the zoning reapplication would be the access, which already has been talked about, and the pond system. I think that that traffic study speaks volumes in terms of what can be done to make this access into the park a much more doable, a much safer situation. And then how the roads are branched off once you get inside the expansion area also helps a lot with the access questions. Pond system. The new pond system would be an upgrade of what's there now. What's there now is not appealable. This will be an improvement. If the new pond system will be outside the water source protection area. The existing pond is inside the water source protection area. That's not good from our viewpoint. Fencing. Fencing will be put around the pond. Also, it's important to note that this lagoon must meet state regulations on top of any conditions put in a conditional use permit. What I mean by that is we're going to have to get this pond approved by the state, and it's going to have to be permitted as well. With this pond, it's going to be a two-cell system. What that means is it's just going to work better. It's an upgrade, and it's state-of-the-art. That's important because, well, there's less odor, less nuisance, and it's going to work better. I'm a real estate attorney, and I can speak to the need for affordable housing in this county. I represent currently 8 mobile home parks in this area. I represent property owners that have upwards to about 4,000 apartment units. What I can tell this commission is that with the mobile home parks that I represent, the vacancies there are around 1%. There's nothing available. Then with the apartments, what I see in terms of a vacancy rate is right at about 2.5% right now. That's an average. But my point being is that this would be a good addition to the county. It would be good housing that would be available. There is growth in that area, especially when you look to the south and you look at some of the industrial growth. I know you're going to have more questions than what I'm going to be able to answer, and I do invite Mr. Johansson to come up, and he can help field some of those questions, especially the questions of a technical nature. Excuse me.
How are you guys doing? Nick Johansson, I'm with Earhart Griffin. We're at 601 North Minnesota Avenue. I can answer any technical questions like you said. I just add maybe a couple things. We have talked to community water. There is water available. We've talked about a plan to upgrade the water in there to service the existing park and the new park. As far as the storm shelter goes, we just made a guess on the size of the building. We knew we were going to go through a process with staff at a later time to discuss finer details of a plan, and I'm sure that would have come up, and I think we'd be happy to address that. So,
Anybody have any questions for him? Not at this time. We may have, you might have to come back. Anyone else in the room care to speak to this item? Please state your name and address.
My name is Paul Sunderman. Address is 47045 249th Street, Baltic. We've owned Sunderman Manufacturing at that location since '87. Personally, I'm indifferent to if they expand the park or not. I don't have a problem with the expansion. My concern is for the bus drop-off that Mrs. Randall mentioned. Mason, if you could bring up that second slide, please. Okay, so currently, when the bus drops off or picks up the children in the morning, what you see there is where these children congregate, right by the mailboxes, right out by the highway. And if they do expand the park, I would just like to see an area where the bus would drive in to the park somewhere to pick these kids up or drop them off. We have trucks coming in, a few, some days maybe 2 or 3, some days none at all. But we do our best when a driver comes, says that they're coming in to drop off a load, we ask them, or try to ask them when they're coming in. If they're coming in the morning, we ask that they don't drop or don't deliver between 7:45 and 8:30 in the morning because of all the kids that are out there. I don't want to see one of these kids get hurt. And I think with the additional traffic that you're going to see going in and out of the park, just with that one access, I think the potential for that goes up. So that's really my only concern. These guys, the old owners of the park, we never really had any trouble with those guys. We've tried to be good neighbors, but I do see that as being an issue. So that would be the only thing I would ask you to address. So,
Sir, I have a question. I sat on a school board for many years. Do you have a spokesperson for that specific area that can work with a school district or work with a bus facility? To allow them, there's got to be some contact that when they're going to be dropping off kids or where they're going to be dropping off.
Well, it's always been, as long as we've been up there, they've always picked up and dropped off right at the access there. Okay, so every morning before the bus shows up, and we've seen the census of school-age kids being picked up go from a half a dozen up to, I don't know, right now there's probably close to 20 kids that are getting picked up, and they all congregate right there. So my employees that come in, they've all been told, when you're coming in, when you're going out, you go slow. And, we try to do our best, to be good neighbors and watch out for these kids. But if you expand the park, I don't know by what percentage, I just think it's something that's worth looking at. So, anyway, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else care to address this item in the audience? Okay,
Come back up.
sure. Step forward, please.
Couple of things I wanted to mention, a few things I forgot the first time around, but the concern about the right to farm covenant, I think one way that could be addressed is if that a clause, something to that effect, was put in the lease agreements, whereby the mobile home tenants would acknowledge and agree that, well, yeah, there is going to be farming next to us, and that's a consent item. We would not be opposed to that, and I think that would be reasonable. Another comment I wanted to make would be, as far as the storm shelter, we would not be opposed to making that shelter larger to accommodate people who are in the existing Coachman Manor mobile home park. I was just chatting with Mr. Johansson really quickly about, well, what would it take? In other words, how much larger would we have to make it so that the Coachman Manor residents could use it? And he was coming up with rough numbers, but it wouldn't seem to be that that egregious of a task. I think it could be done, and we would not be opposed to doing that. Safety is a concern of ours too, and we want that shelter for everybody. So if the staff wanted to make that a condition, we're not opposed to that. The last comment I want to make is about the school bus. It's worth noting that my client had a conversation with the Baltic School superintendent, ran this idea past him, got his input. He liked the idea. He liked the notion that there would be more affordable housing, more good places for people to live in the school district. Why I bring this up is we have a good rapport going with that superintendent. We would not be opposed to talking more with that superintendent, maybe working more too with the school district, the county if need be, but to figure out if there could be a better spot for the pickup and drop off of children. Because there are some more wider open space areas in that park that would accommodate a school bus drop off other than right at the Highway 114 access road. So again, yes, safety's a concern, and we're sure mindful of what's being brought up. We're willing to adapt. We're sure willing to agree to all the staff recommendations. They seem like great recommendations. We want this to be something that the county and the public would be proud of.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? One question. If we were to put another building up there for safety and all, for the storm shelter and all that, could use that as a bus stop right there, let the kids go in there, and if it was a little ways away, and use that or not?
You know, that's a possibility. To be real honest, what I had in mind was, as far as the proposed new shelter on the south side of the expansion area, we were just thinking about making that larger as opposed to adding an additional storm shelter building, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But we're sure willing to talk with the school district
I'm just
about.
thinking that'd be a good idea to bring
Yeah.
kids right there, be away from the mailboxes there. They could go inside and stay there, or out right out front or whatever.
Sure.
And wait for a bus if it was a little farther away from the highway.
If the school bus would be willing to drive south into that expansion area where that storm shelter is gonna go, we're all for that. I think that would be a great drop-off and pickup area. Be safer. It's more away from the traffic, and I feel that that's something we can get accomplished with the school district. We get along well with them so far, and they like this idea. Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Becky.
I think all those proposals sound good. I am not the superintendent, so I can't speak for him. I mean, I don't know if they'd want to drive way into the mobile home park. So, and this is maybe a question for Mr. Johansson, is if there's a way for something that's engineered at the top part, it might mean losing a spot of a mobile home to allow for a school bus stop and pickup that would be not in the way, not at the shared driveway where Sundermans use, but still close so that the school bus wouldn't need to drive all the way in.
I don't want to put words in his mouth, he's right here, but I know that we would be open to the idea, and
I think another idea too, if you look on the plan there, right when that new street turns in, we have identified an office location there. So that's a location I think that might work, considering there is some open space around that entire entranceway that we could maneuver the school bus to pull in and back out and then, leave the main entrance there. So I think there's a lot of options we could explore with whoever the parties are. If it's staff that wants to hold us accountable with the school district, I think we're open to all kinds of ideas. But yeah, safety is definitely a very important issue, so.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So no one else wants to address this item? Guess I'll close the floor. Commissioners? I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, it seems like these guys have their ducks in a row, and I would make a motion to approve conditional use permit 22-84.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that for more discussion then.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve conditional use permit 22-84 for discussion.
Do we need to put it in the condition that the building, the shelter building would be larger to accommodate more people, or do we need to put it in the recommendations about working with the school for a bus safety? I guess that's a question for Scott
Or Mason?
or Mason.
Well, condition number 9 already indicates the 1725 feet of storm shelter. That would accommodate the expansion. The other part is grandfathered in. I suppose you could increase that size, or make it a requirement. If we knew exactly how many spaces were in the old park, I think Mason said it was 15 square feet per unit, so you could quickly do the math. If there was 100 units, that'd be another 1,500. So another 825 square feet. So to accommodate the old mobile home park, or the existing mobile home park, and the new, you would need to add another 800 and it need to be a total of 2,550 square feet. So that would be amending condition number 9, if you so desire.
Think that's necessary? I think they brought together a pretty good plan, from what I've heard. I think the bus situation should really be left up between really the owners of the mobile park and the school district. I mean, that's just how I would see it, because they will have to really see how the bus can get in and out, so to speak, just depending upon the roadway and where the kids will be. I think the conditions that we have here are substantial at this point. Doesn't mean that you guys, especially like your engineer, will take into consideration the safety issues. I mean, that's always foremost in my mind, especially when you have kids involved. And also with the storms involved in a mobile home park, so to speak. I'm an appraiser by trade, and I've been through this thing with storms, and it's not pretty. It's very detrimental, not only for the community, for the families that are involved. And I would hate to see anything happen to anybody because of something, just because we might have omitted something that you guys will see anyway. I do have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further comments about adding any further conditions?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure. Go ahead.
Remembering a little bit of the history of this park, and why we were here tonight, you never want to take a situation that's bad and make it worse. Now, with that said, I feel like maybe in this particular case, we were taking an unfortunate situation and making it better. Like we said here, it appears that they've engaged a qualified engineer to address concerns that are existing in the park. However, I guess I would like to see that we do change condition 9 to 2,550 square feet. So I don't know if you need to withdraw the motion, or can just amend that.
You can make a friendly amendment.
Okay, I'll just make a friendly amendment stating such.
Needs to be seconded.
I'll second that then.
Okay. I do have a motion on the floor, but is also with changing number 9 from 1,725 feet to 2,550 feet. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on. No old business. New business. Scott?
So, under new business, gotta grab my number. So, you may recall, a couple months ago, we had a discussion about other Airbnbs at Wall Lake, and that, both of those items were appealed, and they went to the county commission, and there was a lot of discussion at the county commission about Airbnbs versus bed and breakfasts. And as you saw tonight, we are continuing to process those as bed and breakfasts. However, there is a better classification for those, and it would be what would be called a vacation home rental. And at the county commission meeting, the county commissioners encouraged that we take a look at Airbnbs and maybe further define our zoning ordinance to better deal with this type of a use. So I looked at, I quickly did some research and looked at how other communities in the state are handling vacation home rentals. Specifically, I looked at how they are handling them in more touristy areas like Lawrence County, Spearfish, and Pennington County. And I drew upon that information that I gathered, and also some of my past own personal history when I was in Rapid City, and came up with some ideas on what we could do for a proposed amendment. And I prepared that for you to review. And so I'll go over that tonight, just generally. And this is, the intent of this tonight is just to put this out in front of you, put it on your plate, let you think about it, and hopefully you've had a chance to read this. And then you can give me some direction on how you feel as a planning commission we should move ahead. If we want to continue to process them as bed and breakfasts like we did tonight, it's doable. But if we want to have some further definition and refinement, this is one possibility. And certainly, we can go, as we were to work through the zoning ordinance amendment process, this may not be the final version. You may add or take away things. So let me sort of explain how this is set up. So I prepared an amendment, and it would do a couple of different things. First of all, it would create a definition of a vacation home rental, and that would be 679A. And this is the definition that I came up with. A vacation home rental is a dwelling that is rented, leased, or furnished in its entirety to the public on a daily or weekly basis for more than 14 days in a calendar year, and is not occupied by an owner or manager during the time of the rental. This term does not include a bed and breakfast establishment as defined by South Dakota Codified Law 3418-9.1. So the state of South Dakota has a specific section of state law that deals with vacation home rentals and bed and breakfasts, and this referred to that. So secondly, the next thing it would do, it would create it would allow a vacation home rental as a conditional use permit in several zoning districts. It would make them a conditional use permit in the rural residential, the A1 agriculture, the RC recreation, and let's see, 3, 4, 5, and 9 plan development. So it sets up allowing a vacation home rental as a conditional use permit. And then finally, under Article 12, which is our accessory or our additional use requirements, it would create a section that deals specifically with vacation home rentals that sets up the criteria. And that criteria right now would be that the maximum occupancy would be 2 people per bedroom. That would be A. B, that the vacation home rental would have to be registered with the state as a vacation home. And 3, that the vacation home rental would be reviewed by the planning commission biannually, every 2 years. And the applicant would have to send out notices for that meeting to the owners within 500 feet. We would provide them that list like we do for conditional use permits. And there'd be a $500 review, a $500 fee for that, for that review. And then finally, there would be a D, sets forth a minimum parking requirements of 1 space per guest. So for example, if you had 12 guests a night, you could have 12, you'd be required to have 12 parking spaces. And that might be excessive, but I can also see where, for example, Mr. Anderson said tonight, if you listened, he had 4 hunters there and they were non-related. So you know that there are going to be 4 people there with 4 vehicles. And well, I would still argue, or I would still make the assumption that there are going to be times where you could have 1 person and 1 vehicle. So, however you'd like to handle that, we can discuss that. But, so this is the ordinance I put together, and I wanted to give you time to review it. If you'd like to, so the next step is really up to you as the planning commission. You can take some additional time to review it. If you'd like to schedule a hearing on it where we formalize this, it's up to you. But I'd be glad to answer any questions, and we could also brainstorm what the next steps might be if you have questions for me. But I felt that maybe it's something that we should be addressing.
Madam Chair,
Becky?
I'm full of questions tonight. So, I had a couple thoughts when I read through it, Scott. First of all, I want to thank you for all your hard work on this, because I know it takes a lot of time to put this together, so thank you. I wondered about the maximum occupancy, because sometimes when we've gone, there's been like maybe 2 bunk beds in a room, and so there were 4 people in a room, and now I am traveling over Christmas, and we have a queen-size bed and a twin bed, and in both bedrooms, so that's the standard, there'll be 3 people. So I wondered about the 2 people per room, and I understand that ordinarily that might be what we would expect, but I think bunk beds are relatively common. And then my other questions were, I thought about the parking spot, and I thought that seemed like a lot. And if we wanted to think about 1 spot for every 2 guests, or 1 spot for every 3 guests, I mean, I think there's a way to limit it so that all of a sudden we don't have 12 cars, but to allow a little bit of flexibility. And then I wondered if we wanted to have anything in there, and maybe that comes when the person comes forward, about availability of the owner in case of any issues. But maybe that comes with each conditional use permit as they come before us. Because whenever I've traveled, I mean, it was really easy to get a hold of the owner, and they were very available.
So my question for you, Becky, would be, how would you perceive, or in order of the contacting the owner, is that for the county and like emergency management to contact the owner, or is that for the people renting the property?
That's a good question, Scott. I was thinking that they would be available to make sure they're available for guests. But it's a valid question about emergency response.
Because that would be, they have to register, one of the criteria was that they had to register with the state of South Dakota. But we can also make a requirement that they register with, either emergency management or Metro 911, because you should, I would think it wouldn't cost anything. I mean, it would probably be a benefit to have, like, Metro Communication know that there is a Airbnb or a facility that's being used for that manner.
And this is just a question that I had for clarification. So we've got the ag tourism conditional use, and this would be different because in ag tourism, the owner is present, correct?
Well, potentially, yes, but the ag tourism, I'd have to dive into that a little bit more. I don't know if we allow hoteling or lodging as a use in that ag tourism portion, to be honest with you. I have to look. I'll make a note on that too.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you again, Scott, for your work on this.
And like I said, this isn't necessarily the final, I appreciate your questions because it is a springboard for more thought on the matter. And the 2 guests per bedroom is simply a starting point. But I think you need to limit, I think you need to set a maximum, because whether that's 2 or 3 or 4 per bedroom, because you're right, you could have a room with 2 bunk beds and that would be 4. But I also, I don't want you don't want these to turn into party houses. And it may not happen here, but I will tell you that personally, I've been involved with properties where you have spring break, and now that's probably not gonna happen at Wall Lake, because I don't think the ice is off in March. But I have seen this personally on property that I own in Florida, where neighbors get very upset because people come down on spring break, and you have one person that rents a house and says there's going to be 4 people, and 18 college students show up with boats. And it's a big surprise, and the neighbors are overwhelmed. So,
And I would see that maybe limiting it to 4 might be reasonable, because then that would accommodate 2 bunk beds. And then you think about fire and getting out. Do you really want more than 4 people in a room anyway?
yeah. So,
Yeah.
I think that's something we
Those are
can
my
think about.
comments. Thank you.
Anyone else have any suggestions they want to bounce off me? Tonight's not a hearing. Tonight's just informational. But I would like your direction on how you would like to proceed. Would you like me to, Madam Chairman, would you like a subcommittee? Would you like just have this be prepared for a hearing in January or February, and we hammer it out at a public hearing based on what I've already prepared? What would you like?
Well, we have to start somewhere. I'm not sure quite about the process myself.
Well, I think there are multiple avenues that you can take. I mean, if you feel that it requires more study, then you can put together a subcommittee. Then we can work together on this. I had put something together as just basically some guidelines, maybe some thoughts on how it could be handled based on how other communities in the state are handling it now.
Any other comments from any other commissioners? Well, I think we need to step forward with it.
Okay.
I think a hearing was probably appropriate.
Would you like that hearing in January or February? I'm thinking January might be very busy.
Yeah.
Because typically we get, if you recall, we have 6 weeks of no meeting, and so we sometimes get very busy Januaries, but so what I can do is, under old business in January, would you like me to, we can decide if we want it on the February meeting?
I would think so.
Okay.
You also realize we're going to have a different commissioner on
Yes.
our panel here.
Yeah.
at some point. We don't know who or how that will
But
transpire.
no new commissioners, no new planning commissioners.
No,
There'll
no,
be
we
one-
will stay the same, but we will have an actual new commissioner on.
I did look at, today at the planning commission, terms, and the next terms, so in 2023 will be Doug's, this next year will be Doug and Ryan's last year. They can reapply, but their term runs out basically a year from now. So, just FYI.
Okay?
Okay, I'll put it on the agenda for further discussion in January. It will not be a public hearing. I can make some more changes and bring them back. Maybe some further ideas on what Becky said about contact information for the owner, for the guests to have. And that can be maybe like a information card that has to be posted on the property. And a local registry of some sort that would be kept by maybe Metro. I'll talk to Metro Communications and see if that's something that they would keep. And then I'll look into the ag tourism section a little bit more. All right, I don't have anything else unless you have any further questions for me. All right,
Thank you, Scott, for your time. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Does the audience get to talk to that piece at all?
Well, it's up to you, Madam
What do you
Chairman.
wanna
If you want to have them talk.
I suppose if you want to keep it short. All right, you're gonna, if
That's
you'd
what
address
you'd
it,
like to see, I guess. I don't know.
please state your name and address.
Yep. I am Albert Heising the fifth at 2501 South Escott Avenue. My wife and I own Sodak Stays, which is a short-term rental property management business, or vacation homes as defined by Scott. So appreciate your work on everything. I also am admin with my wife on the short-term, or the Sioux Falls Short-Term Rental Alliance team back here. So hopefully I speak on behalf of them as well. Good enough. A couple of things we did have concerns on as I managed 15 plus short-term rentals or vacation homes is the two people per bedroom. We'd love to brainstorm with you guys. We're open to figuring out a solution. Maybe that looks like square footage per, house or property could be in there. But we definitely think, if you're, a family and you have two infants, you're not gonna have them in separate bedrooms, right? You might, you're on vacation, you take them along. Another thing about our property is we like to promote tourism and people coming in and getting good experiences. So the piece of minimum parking requirement with one parking space per guest we think is excessive, which I know, Becky, you addressed, which we appreciate. We think even in my own residence or hotel rooms, you don't even have that minimum requirement. So that's why we think that's excessive. The other thing we wanted to bring up is just how the review looks. It looks a little bit vague, like what entails in that review biannually. We feel like it could lead to complaints, just like every 2 years you're just bringing more people to use your guys' resources for just complaints. So what that review looks like, and then if that cost for review is $500 biannually, or is it just a one-time fee when you're getting that conditional use permit? And then there was one other thing. Scott, you said emergency planning, you and Becky said kind of like, registering with the state and then registering through like an emergency committee for the guests. I've personally talked to Mayor Tanakin about, we'd be willing to pay the door tax or taxes, our business files for remittance taxes. We don't have to, Airbnb does that for us, but we do it as, like good practice. And we've talked about, numerous things, and, what he's gone back to is that'll take up a lot of resources. We have about 450, vacation home rentals. I'm trying to change the terminology as Scott changed it here on the fly. But that's something that'll take a lot of resources if there's, occupancy between, I know personally it's 55% occupancy rating in the winter and all the way up to 98% in the summertime of 450 units. I mean, you could have upwards of 50 to 100 calls, in a week span. So just thinking about those things, we'd love to brainstorm with you. I don't know if anyone else has anything else, but I think I hit on a lot of stuff and I'd be willing to brainstorm with you guys. So, thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions?
Please come back to the January meeting.
Yeah. February or January?
Well, January, we're going to be, is
Okay.
going to be discussing it, and then we'll
Okay.
see what will happen from there.
Okay. I know you had something, so.
Yeah, I just want to thank the staff again, like everyone here has done so far. It definitely needs a review and a discussion. I think the best classification of Airbnbs would not be vacation home rental. It would be to classify them as short-term rentals. And then, sorry, just to introduce myself, Christian Louder. I've been here the past couple months for our Airbnb at Wall Lake. So you all have already reviewed that, and just want to make sure that we're part of this discussion. So the county commission, when they requested that review of the current process of short-term rental permitting, they did it because they did not feel that they should be the governing board on these decisions. They don't want to have to review these every 2 years all the time. They want a process set up so that it can just be yes or no real quick based on a few different factors. So I think that should be given a little bit more consideration. And the only reason that the county commission requested the review and the proposed change to the ordinance was not requested by any stakeholder. So these reviews right here, or these changes right here were not requested in particular. But again, the conversation was, so I'm glad we're having that. But I do think that this slight change regarding the review every 2 years, it's going to be onerous, and it'll be counterproductive to the stated goal of the county commission, and it'll be onerous to the short-term rental providers, some of whom, they could be on tight budgets. They may have limited sources of income. Airbnb, short-term rentals may be one of their only sources of income. So adding that additional $500 every 2 years could really have an impact on a lot of people. So the, and it could affect their ability to continue to afford the home that they live in. So the ordinance already allows for complaints to be lodged, and the staff, already follows up on complaints at any time. So I don't think the community review every 2 years, it's kind of redundant. That those complaints can be lodged at any point and then immediately followed up by the staff. So this can take place during the entire life of the CUP right now. An additional requirement to review all short-term CUPs every 2 years will be redundant and not the best use of taxpayer funds for, these types of meetings happening for each and every short-term rental every 2 years. One piece of legislation regarding fees and inspections for multifamily rentals was just rejected in Colorado because they would be onerous to property managers. This provision could be a disincentive for future short-term rentals, which could limit the income realized by the county in the end. Fort Collins in Colorado is an example of an ordinance that was successfully implemented to the satisfaction of most stakeholders. They charge an annual registration fee of $100 and allow for complaint reviews year-round, just like Minnehaha County without a review. So I encourage the county to consider the implications of the change in the ordinance to not only the county revenue, but also the impact on the quality of life for county residents. Yes, the ordinance can be a beneficial source of revenue for the county, but the lost income for hosts through fees and the lost income from lower vacancy through the necessity of passing those fees on to guests would be onerous to short-term rental hosts and an overall decrease in the current quality of the existing ordinance. But to end on a positive note, reviewing the ordinance is a great opportunity to improve the process, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Dan Lewison, 3709 East 52nd Street. Just a couple things. To classify it as a vacation rental just seems absolutely ridiculous to me. To kind of second what he said, I know plenty of people. I myself, I'm a healthcare professional. I go work. Where do I stay? I can go stay at an Airbnb. I'm not there on vacation. I'm working. And I know plenty of other people that work and use these as resources. So it's not just vacation. And these places aren't just on the lake. So people do depend on them to work and have stayed there longer, months, if not longer, 6 months, at Airbnbs to work here in town. The parking, I like what you said about parking. I think 1 per guest is absolutely ridiculous. I have 7 kids. I can't even do that at my own house. Like, I just think it's absolutely over excessive. As far as reviews and making a $500 fee every 2 years, I think is excessive as well. And as far as registering with emergency services, I'm not quite sure why we'd need to do that, because everybody has a phone. You have to have a phone to use Airbnb. You can dial 911. Also, complaints, I would argue that private businesses are usually quicker and more efficient, no offense, than government. And they usually are pretty quick to weed out partiers and bad hosts. I think the process works, and I think they do a good job. So I think a lot of those things take care of themselves. But I do welcome a process and a review. But to classify these short-term rentals as vacation, I don't agree with that at all. But anyway, thank you.
Madam Chairman, do you care if I make one quick comment?
Sure, go ahead.
I think there might be some confusion in the audience that this ordinance would somehow regulate what goes on in the city of Sioux Falls. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this body and the county has no jurisdiction inside the city limits, and they can regulate, and they do regulate, short-term rentals or whatever, the way that the city decides. So I want to make sure people understand that what we're proposing would have no impact or effect on whatever's inside the city limits of Sioux Falls or Garrettson or Brandon or any incorporated municipality. So want to make sure everyone knows that. We're only talking about what is in the unincorporated portions of Minnehaha County.
Any other comments?
Hi, Ken the Lamberdew at the Realtor Association of Sioux Empire. I don't really need to beat a dead horse anymore, but I would just like to say that I appreciate your work there, Scott, and I would like to help a lot because we are planning on commissioning a study in this next year about the benefits and possible disadvantages of short-term rentals just to get a full grasp on the situation. So once that study's out, I can give it to anyone who would be affected by that. We are the whole Sioux Empire, 5 counties. So just kind of working on that and working together to get all the facts out there and make sure that all our decisions are ruled in fact would be the best way to go forward for us. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name's Adam Seif, 205 East 30th Street, and for any of the conversations with Airbnb, I have 4 in Sioux Falls here, and I think knowing what the problem we're trying to alleviate helps bring clarity And that way, when we make, any whatever underscore ways to help focus on whatever thing we're trying, if it's money or if it's parking or parties, and Airbnb works on whether it's stopping parties, they're not allowed. But they're, oops, getting crazy talking with my hands. But finding that solution, if it's parking, like for me, I try to be a great host. I want to show off our awesome city. I'm a DJ entertainer in town, but I bring people for weddings, and then I'm at their wedding and they're staying at my house, and I want to do anything I can to make them see how awesome our city is. And then likewise, I want to do my best to host them. And whether it's adding parking, I make my driveways wider so that people can park not on the street. And I talk to my neighbors and figure out, how they're my eyes. And they tell me things. I have cameras on them too. And I want to be a good neighbor. I want to be a great host in the city. And Airbnb is bringing people. I think to Scott, I would just tell you that Rapid City and the reasons why people are going there isn't why they're coming to Sioux Falls. And so maybe there's a better city that looks like ours.
But you also understand that you said you had 4
Yeah.
short-term rentals. Those are all in the city?
In the city, yep.
You understand that this would have no impact on your?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure you understand.
And I think it's more for the business of Airbnbs and whatever, and even just to say that each Airbnb is different. Mine are usually multiple rooms where some people have just a room. So anyways, they're all a little different. So thank you.
How you guys doing? Larry Lukey, 132 South Dakota Avenue. Just a couple of things I want to point out is these are rentals. I'd like to see that, we kind of maybe have the same rental process. So I don't know if a conditional use permit is the actual way to do it. Maybe it's just basically a form, just like Sioux Falls. You fill out a rental application, and that's filed with the city. And that actually would give the contact information for the emergency services. We have a property management company. We manage 200 units. We're on file. They call us when we have emergencies. So I think that's a way to take care of that. And there's also a lot of different setups on Airbnbs. And so, you might have bedrooms, like the last gentleman said. You might have a loft setup, where basically they have beds that fold out of couches and all that type of stuff. So I think the best way to do this is to kind of look at, just the application process instead of doing a conditional use permit. And I think that would take care of a lot of these issues. Thank you.
Okay, you guys are welcome to come back in January. We'll still be discussing this for a while.
I'm behind the pole all the time. Dave Boehm again from Sioux Falls here. I just always think less government is better government. Less restrictive is going to be better in the long run. I've held a couple of different public offices, so I've been in places like you, not your position, but let's, maybe look at that too. Be that in the county. Usually, the further you get from a metropolitan area, the less restrictive things are. Tonight I saw, somebody living out in the country basically parking his house on a property line the way it looked on the map. And he's worried about, a barking dog or whatever. If you're out in the country, there's going to be, a broader view of how things are done. So I don't know why you want to become more restrictive at the county level. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we're done for tonight. I will entertain a motion, I think, to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone.
You have a nice Christmas.
You too.